Tonight, we're leaving behind the noise of the world and spending a quiet, rainy evening on the edge of the Hogwarts grounds. The castle windows glow warmly in the distance. Rain taps softly against the earth. And down a winding path near the forbidden forest, a lantern shines through the mist. Inside a small stone hut sits one of the kindest souls in the wizarding world, Rubius Hagrid. Tonight, there will be no great battles, no dark wizards, no dangerous adventures, just a warm fire, a hot cup of tea, and a collection of wonderful stories shared on a rainy night. So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy cozy fantasy sleep stories. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable beneath your blankets, listen to the rain outside, and follow the lantern down the muddy path toward Hagrid's hut. The kettle is already boiling. The rain continues tapping gently against the windows. Outside, the evening grows darker with every passing minute. Mist drifts across the grounds, softening the distant lights of the castle until they appear like golden stars floating in the fog. Inside the hut, however, everything feels warm. The fire crackles cheerfully. The kettle hums above glowing coals, and Hagrid is already preparing tea. "Sit yourself down," he says, waving one enormous hand toward a sturdy wooden chair beside the hearth. The traveler gladly accepts. The chair is wonderfully comfortable, the sort of chair that seems designed specifically for rainy evenings. Hagrid bustles about the room, collecting mugs large enough to be soup bowls for most people. A moment later, steaming tea is poured. The rich aroma fills the hut immediately. Strong tea, the kind Hagrid prefers. The kind capable of warming even the coldest evening. There you go. He places the mug carefully upon the table. The traveler wraps both hands around it. The warmth feels wonderful. For a few moments, neither speaks. There is no need. Some evenings are improved by conversation. Others are improved by simply listening. The rain, the fire, the kettle. Together, they create a kind of music, a peaceful rhythm that settles over the room like a blanket. Hagrid eventually lowers himself into a chair opposite the fire. The wooden frame creaks in protest, as it always does. The giant smiles sheepishly. "Been meaning to fix that chair for years." The traveler glances at it. "It seems to be surviving, barely." Hagrid chuckles. The deep sound fills the room warmly. Outside, rainwater trickles from the roof. Somewhere beyond the hut, an owl calls softly through the mist. The evening feels wonderfully distant from the worries of the world. Eventually, the traveler notices a photograph resting upon one of the shelves. An old photograph, the edges slightly worn. Several smiling faces move gently within the frame. Hagrid notices the glance. His expression softens. He rises and carefully picks it up. A lot of memories in that one. The traveler studies the picture. Young faces, happy faces, friends standing together beneath summer sunlight. For a moment, Hagrid simply watches them, then smiles. Funny thing about memories, the fire crackles. The rain continues falling. They get warmer as the years go by. The traveler nods. That feels true. The gamekeeper settles back into his chair. The photograph rests carefully upon his knee. He seems thoughtful, more thoughtful than usual, the sort of mood rainy evenings often encourage. "Yeah, no," he says softly. "Most people think the best days are the big ones." The traveler listens. The adventures. The kettle whistles gently. The celebrations. The rain taps against the glass. The exciting stuff. Hagrid smiles. But some of my favorite memories are nights like this. The statement hangs comfortably in the air. Simple. Honest. The traveler glances around the hut. The glowing fire. The shelves packed with curiosities. The warm lantern light. The steady rain. It is easy to understand what Hagrid means. Many people spend their lives chasing extraordinary moments, yet ordinary evenings often become the ones remembered most fondly. Hagrid reaches for his tea, takes a long sip, then sighs happily. Perfect weather for stories. The traveler smiles. That sounds promising. Hagrid notices immediately. His eyes twinkle. Oh, I've got stories. The response comes with absolute confidence. The sort of confidence possessed by someone who has spent years collecting unusual experiences. The traveler has no doubt. Anyone who lives beside the Forbidden Forest is bound to have stories. Many stories. Perhaps too many. The giant leans back comfortably. The firelight dances across his beard. Rain streaks softly down the windows. And somewhere deep within the forest beyond the hut, unseen creatures move quietly through the darkness. Most people would find the thought unsettling. Strangely, it feels comforting here. The forest is simply part of the landscape, part of the rhythm of life, part of the view from Hagrid's window. The gamekeeper notices the traveler glancing toward the dark tree line. A grin spreads beneath his beard. Wondering what's out there? The traveler nods. Hagrid laughs, a deep, warm laugh. Well now. He sets his mug aside. The fire crackles louder. Or perhaps it only seems that way, because everyone loves a good story, especially one that begins with the Forbidden Forest. I reckon, Hagrid says with a smile. It's about time I told ye about some of my favorite creatures. Outside, the rain continues its gentle song. Inside, the fire burns bright. And beyond the windows, the ancient forest waits beneath the darkness, filled with mysteries, memories, and magical being. Let us leave the warmth of the teacups for a moment and turn our attention toward the dark forest beyond the window. The Forbidden Forest. Even the name sounds mysterious. Rain continues falling softly outside. Droplets slide down the glass. The trees beyond sway gently in the wind. Most students at Hogwarts spend years trying not to enter the forest. Hagrid, on the other hand, spends much of his life wandering through it quite happily. The difference, as he often explains, is perspective. People give creatures a bad reputation sometimes. He settles deeper into his chair. The firelight flickers across his enormous beard. Most of them aren't dangerous if you know how to behave around them. The traveler smiles politely. That statement sounds reassuring, until one remembers who is saying it. This is, after all, the same man who once considered a three-headed dog perfectly suitable as a pet. Hagrid notices the expression immediately. A grin spreads across his face. Fair enough. The room fills with laughter. The rain taps steadily against the roof. The fire crackles. The giant reaches toward a nearby shelf and lifts a worn leather notebook. Its pages are thick, weathered, filled with sketches and notes gathered over many years. My creature journal. His voice carries obvious pride. An Adden Terret for ages. The traveler leans closer. The pages reveal remarkable drawings. Creatures of every shape and size. Winged beasts, forest dwellers, water creatures. Some familiar, many not. Each accompanied by careful observations written in Hagrid's large, uneven handwriting. The first page he opens contains a magnificent creature, a hippogriff. Its eagle-like head is drawn in remarkable detail. Powerful wings spread across the page. Its horse-like body appears strong enough to carry a rider across mountains. Now there's a creature I always admired. Hagrid smiles warmly. Buckbeak was one of the finest. His eyes grow distant. Remembering, the traveler notices how often this happens. Every creature is tied to a memory. Every memory tied to a story. Hagrid gently traces one finger along the sketch. Hippogriffs teach respect. The statement sounds oddly wise. The traveler nods. Hagrid continues. They don't care who ye are. The fire pops softly. They don't care if you're famous. The rain falls. They don't care if you're rich. A grin appears. They care whether ye show proper manners. That seems entirely reasonable and somehow very funny. The giant laughs quietly. I've known a few humans who could learn from that. The traveler cannot argue. Several pages later, another sketch appears. This one depicts a small dragon. Or rather, what was once a small dragon. Hagrid immediately looks guilty. The traveler recognizes that expression. It is rarely a good sign. Oh. The giant clears his throat. That's Norberg. The traveler waits. There is always more. Sure enough. Well, technically, Norberta now. The grin returns. Despite the years that have passed, Hagrid still looks proud, as though secretly raising a dragon was a perfectly sensible decision. Perhaps in his mind it was. The rain grows slightly heavier outside. The sound upon the roof becomes wonderfully soothing. Inside, the fire burns brighter. The hut feels smaller, cozier. The perfect place for stories. Hagrid flips through more pages. Mooncalves, bow truckles, feastrels. Each creature receives the same treatment. Respect, curiosity, affection. The traveler slowly realizes something. Hagrid never speaks about creatures as monsters, only as living beings, different, misunderstood, occasionally dangerous, but never evil. The distinction feels important. The giant notices the thoughtful expression. Yeah, no, he says softly. The room quiets. A lot of people fear what they don't understand. The fire glows warmly between them. But understanding something changes everything. The traveler considers this. Outside, the forest stands dark and mysterious, yet somehow it feels less frightening now. Not because it contains fewer dangers, because it contains more wonder. The evening drifts onward. Story follows story. One memory leads naturally into another. Hagrid recalls helping injured creatures, watching young unicorns grow, finding rare tracks after fresh snowfall, listening to centaurs discussing the stars on clear autumn nights. The traveler listens, completely absorbed. The rain, the fire, the steady voice of the gamekeeper. Together they create a peaceful rhythm, a kind of magic all their own. Eventually, Hagrid closes the notebook, very carefully, as though handling something precious. Because he is. The journal contains years of memories, years of friendships, years of quiet moments hidden among the trees. The giant places it back upon the shelf, then glances. The rain had softened by the time they stepped outside. No longer a steady curtain falling from the sky. It drifted gently through the evening air like a fine silver mist. Tiny droplets clung to every leaf and blade of grass, catching the glow of the lantern hanging beside Hagrid's door. The night felt peaceful, the sort of night that encouraged slow walks and quiet thoughts. The castle stood high upon the distant hillside, its countless windows glowing warmly through the darkness. Reflections shimmered across puddles scattered along the muddy paths, turning the ground into a patchwork of gold and silver. Hagrid moved comfortably through the night. The weather never seemed to bother him. Rain, wind, snow, or fog, all of it felt like part of the natural rhythm of the world. He walked with the ease of someone who had spent decades among forests and fields. The edge of the forbidden forest stretched away beside them. Ancient trees rose into the darkness. Their branches intertwined high overhead, creating a living roof of leaves and shadow. Rainwater dripped steadily from moss-covered limbs. Everything smelled of damp earth, pine needles, wet bark, fresh soil. The scent carried a strange comfort. The forest was often described as dangerous, mysterious, even frightening. Yet on nights like this, it felt more like an old, sleeping giant. Quiet, patient, watching the world pass by. Small lights flickered among the trees, tiny flashes appearing and disappearing in the darkness. Fireflies drifted through the undergrowth. Their soft glow moved between roots and ferns like wandering stars. The path followed the forest's edge, never fully entering, never entirely leaving. A narrow line between open ground and ancient wilderness. Hagrid seemed happiest there, neither inside the forest nor away from it, simply alongside it. The rain continued its gentle song. Drops tapped against leaves overhead. Water trickled through hidden streams. The entire landscape seemed alive with quiet movement. Occasionally, the distant call of an owl drifted through the darkness. At other times, something moved deeper among the trees. Nothing threatening, just reminders that countless creatures shared the night. A fox crossing a narrow trail, a deer stepping carefully between shadows, perhaps a family of magical creatures settling into hidden shelters before the heavier rain returned. The forest possessed its own rhythm, its own routines, its own life. Watching it felt strangely calming. There was no urgency here. No schedules, no deadlines. Only seasons, weather, growth, rest. The simple cycles that had repeated for centuries. Mist gathered between the trees, soft silver clouds drifting through the darkness. The lantern light reflected within them, creating small pockets of warmth against the blackness. For a while, the distant castle disappeared entirely. The world became smaller, just the path, the rain, the trees. The comforting glow of the lantern. A feeling was almost dreamlike. The sort of moment rarely remembered while it was happening, yet often treasured years later. Eventually, the path reached a gentle rise, overlooking a meadow. Rain-soaked grass stretched beneath the moonlit clouds. Wildflowers bent beneath droplets of water. The entire landscape shimmered softly beneath the night sky. From here, Hogwarts appeared once more. Its towers emerged from the mist like something from a storybook. Warm, bright, welcoming. The sight carried a special kind of comfort, a reminder that home was never very far away, even on dark nights, even beside ancient forests. The rain finally began easing. The clouds thinned overhead. Tiny gaps appeared among them. One by one, stars emerged, faint at first, then brighter. Reflections appeared upon every puddle and whetstone. The world seemed to sparkle. The forest remained silent, peaceful, content beneath the returning starlight. For a few moments, everything felt perfectly balanced. The castle and the forest, the wild and the familiar, adventure and comfort, mystery and safety, all existing side by side beneath the same sky. Eventually, the lantern turned back toward the hut. The warm glow moved slowly through the darkness. Ahead waited the fire, the kettle, the shelter of stone walls. Waned. Yet something of the forest came with them, a sense of calm, a sense of wonder, a reminder that even the quietest corners of the world contain stories, stories hidden among roots and branches, stories carried by rain and wind, stories waiting patiently to be noticed. As the hut came back into view through the mist, golden light spilled from its windows once more. The fire still burned. The evening still waited. And before the night finally came to an end, there would be time for a few more memories beside the hearth. The warmth of the hut felt even more welcoming after the walk. Rainwater glistened upon the windows. The fire glowed steadily within the hearth. The familiar scent of wood smoke lingered in the air, mixing pleasantly with tea leaves and old books. Outside, the forbidden forest settled deeper into the night. Inside, time seemed to slow. The sort of slow, peaceful pace that belongs only to rainy evenings. The lantern was placed beside the door. Its light joined the glow of the fire, filling the room with soft amber colors. Shadows stretched lazily across shelves crowded with curiosities, gathered over many years. There were feathers, maps, strange stones, bits of old equipment, small reminders of a life spent exploring the magical corners of the world. Hagrid settled into his favorite chair once more. The chair creaked gently beneath his weight. The sound felt almost as familiar as the rain itself. The firelight danced across his beard as he gazed thoughtfully into the flames. Some people collected treasures, others collected photographs. Hagrid collected memories, and there seemed to be an endless supply of them. The years at Hogwarts alone could fill countless evenings. Students arrived and departed. Seasons passed. Generations changed. Yet the grounds remained. The castle remained. The forest remained. And through it all, Hagrid remained too. A quiet guardian standing between the familiar world and the mysterious wilderness beyond. The fire crackled softly. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the wet branches. The night felt older somehow, as though the rain had washed away the noise of everyday life, leaving only stillness behind. Among Hagrid's favorite memories were the creatures, not because they were rare, not because they were unusual, but because each one carried a story, a beginning, a lesson, a moment worth remembering. Some memories were joyful, others bittersweet. Most were a little of both. A dragon's egg resting upon a wooden table, a tiny creature emerging into the world for the first time, the wonder of witnessing new life, the excitement, the responsibility, the realization that even magical creatures begin as small, vulnerable things. Years later, the memories still carried warmth, not because everything had gone perfectly, because it hadn't. Few adventures ever do. What remained was the sense of wonder, the feeling of watching something extraordinary unfold. The same feeling appeared whenever Hagrid thought about hippogriffs, proud creatures, beautiful creatures, creatures that demanded patience and respect. Their wings carried them above forests and lakes. Their sharp eyes missed very little. To earn the trust of such a creature was never guaranteed. It required care, understanding, time. The memory of a hippogriff bowing beneath a bright sky remained vivid even now. The elegance, the strength, the quiet dignity. Some moments become permanent fixtures in the mind, not because they are dramatic, because they are meaningful. Because they are meaningful. Rain tapped gently against the glass. The fire settled lower. A log shifted among glowing embers. The room remained wonderfully peaceful. As the evening drifted onward, the memories became softer. Less about creatures, more about people. Students crossing the grounds on snowy mornings, lanterns glowing during winter evenings, the sight of Hogwarts reflected in the black lake during calm weather. Small moments, ordinary moments, the kind people often overlook while they are happening, yet those moments frequently become the ones most cherished later. There was a certain comfort in remembering them. The world often celebrated great victories and dramatic adventures, yet life itself was usually built from quieter things. Shared meals, friendly faces, rainy evenings beside warm fires, the simple pleasure of belonging somewhere. Hagrid had spent much of his life at Hogwarts, long enough to watch countless seasons pass, long enough to see children become adults, long enough to understand that home was not simply a place. It was a collection of memories woven together over time. 1,000 small moments, 1,000 familiar sights, 1,000 ordinary days that slowly became extraordinary in hindsight. Outside, the clouds continued thinning. Occasionally a star appeared between them. Then another. The night sky gradually returned. The storm was passing. The world beyond the windows felt calm, fresh, renewed. The firelight reflected softly upon polished kettles hanging above the hearth. Everything in the room seemed touched by warmth, even the shadows. The hour had grown late now, the sort of hour when conversation naturally fades, when thoughts become quieter, when memories drift gently through the mind without demanding attention. The hut felt less like a building and more like a sanctuary, a place untouched by hurry, untouched by worry, a small island of comfort on the edge of a vast and mysterious forest. The fire burned steadily. The rain continued its peaceful rhythm. And somewhere beyond the darkness, dawn was already beginning its long journey toward Hogwarts. But first, there would be one final chapter to the evening, one final moment beside the hearth, one final story carried by the glow of the last log on the fire. The night had grown very quiet. The rain that had accompanied the evening for so many hours had finally faded into occasional droplets falling from the roof and branches outside. The storm was gone. In its place remained a deep and peaceful stillness, the kind of stillness that only arrives after midnight. Inside the hut, the fire had settled into a bed of glowing embers. Soft orange light filled the room. The shadows no longer danced. They rested, Everything seemed content to be exactly where it was. The kettle sat quietly above the hearth. The shelves stood crowded with years of memories. The lantern near the door burned low, and beyond the windows, the Hogwarts grounds slept beneath a sky slowly clearing of clouds. The world felt suspended between night and morning, between wakefulness and dreams. A final log rested beside the fireplace. Its bark was dark and weathered. Its surface carried the scent of pine and rain. Hagrid reached for it earlier in the evening and set it aside, not because the room needed more warmth, because some nights deserved a little more time, a little more light, a little more company. The log eventually found its place among the embers. A small shower of sparks rose briefly into the chimney, then faded. The new flames caught slowly, patiently. Their glow spread through the room once more. The familiar warmth returned. Outside, a thin layer of mist drifted across the grounds. The distant towers of Hogwarts emerged beneath moonlight. Their reflection shimmered faintly upon puddles left behind by the rain. The castle appeared peaceful, almost dreamlike. Far from classrooms, far from adventures, simply resting beneath the stars. The sight carried a quiet comfort, a reminder that even great places sleep. The forest beyond the hut remained dark, yet it no longer seemed mysterious. The evening had transformed it. The trees had become familiar silhouettes. The shadows felt softer. The sounds of the forest seemed less like secrets and more like lullabies. Everything belonged. The castle, the forest, the rain, the night, even the silence. The fire crackled gently, a warm, steady sound. One of the oldest sounds in the world, the sort of sound people have gathered around for thousands of years, sharing stories, sharing meals, sharing moments exactly like this one. Time moved differently beside a fire. Minutes stretched comfortably, thoughts slowed, worries drifted farther away. The warmth encouraged reflection, not dramatic reflection, simple reflection, the kind that arrives naturally when nothing demands attention. The evening itself seemed to become a memory while it was still happening. The path leading to the hut, the lantern glowing through the rain, the walk beside the forest, the warmth of tea, the quiet comfort of familiar surroundings. Small moments, ordinary moments, yet somehow precious. The greatest memories often arrive disguised as ordinary evenings. The night continued deepening. The stars multiplied overhead. More appeared with every passing minute as the last clouds drifted away. The sky became clear, endless, filled with silent light. Somewhere in the distance, an owl crossed the moonlit grounds. Its wings moved soundlessly through the darkness. A peaceful traveler beneath the stars. The sight lasted only a moment. Then it was gone. Like so many beautiful things, brief, gentle, enough. The fire settled lower once again. The final log glowed warmly among the embers. Its work nearly complete. The hut remained cozy, safe, the sort of place where worries felt smaller. The sort of place people remembered years later without always understanding why. Perhaps comfort itself leaves an imprint upon memory. Perhaps kindness does. Perhaps home does. The castle stood quietly upon the hill. The forest rested beneath the stars. The world felt balanced, complete. Nothing more was needed. Beyond the eastern, not visible yet, only hinted at, a subtle softening of the darkness, the promise of morning waiting patiently beyond the mountains. Soon birds would begin singing. Soon lights would appear in castle windows. Soon another day. But not yet, for now there remained only the final moments of a rainy evening, the final warmth of the fire, the final glow of the lantern, the final peaceful silence before sleep. The embers shimmered softly. The room grew still. Outside, droplets continued falling from leaves left wet by the storm. The sound blended perfectly with the fading crackle of the fire. Together, they formed the last music of the evening. Simple, gentle, comforting. The sort of music carried into dreams. And as the final flames settled into glowing coals, the night wrapped itself around the little hut beside the forbidden forest. Warm, quiet, safe. The rain had passed. The stories had been told. The fire burned low, and somewhere beyond the sleeping grounds of Hogwarts, morning waited patiently for its turn. The end.